What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and the information is finally flowing in. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft and what they just posted on their blog about the Xbox X Series. We're going to talk a little bit about hardware. I'm going to try to be, as layman as possible. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments section, and I will get to them, or somebody knowledgeable will get to them as soon as they can. This is some information about the Xbox X Series that Phil Spencer posted on the blog, and there was some interesting information here. I think a lot of people weren't expecting them to be this open on a couple things, so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what it'll mean, and maybe to describe a little bit to you if you're sort of wondering what some of these numbers are, what some of these terms are. So let's jump into this. This is the Xbox Wire, which is Xbox's official blog, and this is from Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, today on the 24th of February. What can you expect from the next generation of gaming? I'm going to read to you the first paragraph, and there's a reason why. The future of gaming has never been more inspiring. Creativity in games is flourishing. New services empower you to discover more games and bring you closer to the games and the creators and streamers you love. The cloud creates a massive opportunity to stream console quality games and play with the people you want wherever you want. And for many of us, nothing is more inspiring than the dawn of a new console generation. Okay, so that last bit, absolutely agree. Love new console generations once we finally start getting data. You guys know me, I'm a little bit hedgy when it comes to not getting data. I sort of get bored. But now that we've got some information, this is cool. A lot of that's fluff. The reason, though, that I wanted to read that to you is because Microsoft is very careful with a lot of things they say, as are most companies. And some of the things we see here are sort of indicators of what we're going to see in the future. The ability to talk, and connect with streamers that you love, as well as stream your own games, as well as play them in the cloud. There were some rumors that the Xbox in particular had some things going on when it came to streaming and assisting the gamer with streaming. I'm sure PS5 will have somewhat of the same kind of system going on. Both of them allow for you to stream to various services. I think we're going to see that really be increased, and I'm fairly certain we're going to see a lot of apps that are on the Xbox in particular from the store, like Discord. I don't know if we'll see Discord now that I think about it, but we will see probably apps for the particular streaming services, or some kind of system that's all in one for Xbox, where maybe you just sign up and it's like you have your own Mixer page. I talked about this in the podcast, where it's like when you get yourself an Xbox account, or you've already got one, if you get one of these systems, it's just like, boom, here's your streamer page. We create it for you, and it just makes that easier. We'll see if that happens. But talking about the cloud as well. Sorry, didn't mean to hit my mic. So the next thing I want to talk about is the information that they actually gave, and they posted this. You can see it here right on the screen. I'll make sure this is available. This is their actual PowerPoint presentation post. So these are actual factual numbers that they posted. And there's a reason why I think this is actually very interesting. It says the new Xbox Series X, 12 teraflops. So 12 teraflops, why does it matter? 12 teraflops, the easiest way to describe a teraflop is it's the combined power of that graphics processing unit, and it is the de facto way in which the past systems were rated. A lot of people thought that as we move forward, teraflops wouldn't be discussed as much because there's efficiencies, and the term teraflop is really sort of changed. When it comes to the teraflops here, this is sort of what's happened. Things have changed. Those teraflops don't necessarily always mean the same thing. And there's been some adjustments between AMD and NVIDIA teraflops. What do the teraflop numbers mean between those two as competitors as well? 12 is a high number. 12 is actually, I think I saw some people lowballing the expectations for these consoles in the 9 to 10 department, but 12 is not bad for a console at all. And I mean, when you look at it, this is something that is very performance based when it comes to a console. This is something else they say. This is in the blog. Next generation custom processor. This is what they write. Xbox Series X is our most powerful console ever, powered by our custom designed processor, leveraging AMD's latest Zen 2 and RDNA 2 architectures, delivering 4 times the processing power of the Xbox One, and enabling developers to leverage 12 teraflops of GPU performance, which is twice that of an Xbox One X, and more than 8 times the original Xbox One. That's pretty insane. That is very high. But what's interesting here is Zen 2 and RDNA 2 architectures. That's that increase that I talked about, and improvements there. RDNA 2 in particular is where AMD has stated that their hardware ray tracing was going to appear. And that would make sense because Microsoft talks about ray tracing here in a bit. So a lot of people thought that this was going to be an RDNA 1 device and maybe have some of the elements of 2 sort of created in a custom chip, but they're very clear here. This is Zen 2, RDNA 2 architecture. That's pretty impressive. That's actually a nice step up. Again, for a console, if you have a PC, these kind of things maybe aren't for you, but for a console, this is good. That's just cool. Like there's no reason to hope that they suck, and 12 teraflops is certainly nothing to scoff at. That is a very powerful system when it comes to a console, when it comes to most people's PCs right now, in fact. So very cool stuff there. Variable rate shading. So Microsoft says our patented form of variable rate shading empowers developers to more efficiently utilize the full power of the Xbox Series. If you didn't watch my previous videos, I talked about variable rate shading. This is another efficiency like variable resolution and multi-sampling for anti-aliasing. What it does is, this is on the shader side. So instead of anti-aliasing, this is where shader effects are applied. It can look and it can create a more coarse version of a shader in a place that you may not be looking or care about or may be obscured. That way it can use the extra power for the main picture itself. And this makes a lot of sense. This is something that you see a lot of times more in VR with some of these kind of discussions, but these variable rate things are incredibly intelligent because what they're doing is they're creating efficiencies where brute force was used in the past. There's nothing wrong with this. This is absolutely something that's on the PC as well, something that people are shooting for. And variable rate shading is really important. All of the variable stuff I think is great because usually what happens is a person will not notice anything like this is going on, but it will actually just add a little bit more power to the system itself because it's not wasting power in places that the gamer can't see, that are blurred, let's say, by fast motion or something like that. So very important. And just overall, I think that this kind of technique is highly interesting to me as sort of a tech head. The next up, hardware accelerated DirectX ray tracing. Ray tracing, going to give you the simple, you can go online and check out what ray tracing is. It traces the rays of light, and that way it creates more accurate lighting effects on your screen. We've seen this with Control and other games. Some games have not been perfect in their implementation, others have. But ray tracing is vital, I think, moving forward to deliver a more accurate picture. And if you go on any YouTube, if you go onto your YouTube and you look up any of the ray tracing videos that you can see a lot of improvements that ray tracing can offer and the accuracy improvements it can offer. This is hardware accelerated DirectX ray tracing. We don't know exactly how efficient it will be. We don't know exactly how accurate it will be, but it's obvious with RDNA 2 and Microsoft moving forward in this way that they consider it incredibly important because they made sure that people knew it was in the main bullet of the system itself. This is something that we all expect PS5 to have as well. So the next thing they talk about is some stuff we've seen. SSD storage. I've talked about this before. SSD storage is great. The rumor is that there's some basically some NVMe or NVMe storage on the motherboard itself for the Xbox and for the PS5. Most likely the PS5's is a more proprietary system that we're hearing. SSD storage in and of itself is very cool because that means your games will just be accessed quicker. It depends. I don't necessarily agree with exactly what they're saying. Game worlds are larger, more dynamic, and load in a flash, and fast travel is just that fast. Yes, that is true in some ways, but there are other inefficiencies there that they're not talking about right now. So SSD storage in and of itself is great, but right now that's just sort of a bullet point, sort of a blurb. So don't expect much from that until we get more data. Quick Resume. The new Quick Resume feature lets you continue multiple games from a suspended state almost instantly. I don't know who wanted this. I have no clue who wanted this. Microsoft has stated a couple times that people wanted it, that they talked to somebody. And this reminds me of YouTube, when YouTube's like, people have talked to us, many people, and have said, we don't want real-time numbers or whatever. And so YouTube's like, we're just going to remove them. This is sort of like Microsoft. They're like, we've talked to people and they said Quick Resume is awesome. Who wanted Quick Resume? Basically, all it allows is multiple games to be paused, switched out, play another game, then pause again and play another game. I mean, I get it, right? I get that that's an improvement, but it's not an improvement that, at least to me, should be on this. It sort of seems weird, but basically what they're saying is you could be playing one of your games, be like, hey man, now I want to play Control. Boom, jump to Control. Hey man, now I want to play Halo. Boom, jump to Halo. And it pauses multiple different games and multiple save states and loads them very quickly. You know what? You can post in the comments if you think that's a big deal, because I just don't have anything else to say on that. Dynamic latency input. This is something that they're talking about here, so I want to talk about it to you guys. We're optimizing latency in the player to console pipeline, starting with the Xbox wireless controller, which leverages our high bandwidth proprietary wireless communication protocol when connected to the console. To give you an example of what this is, that part is simply making a more efficient codec for the Bluetooth that they have, which is proprietary, or the wireless signal, and making sure that there's as little latency as possible. It's great stuff. They also say with dynamic latency input, a new feature will synchronize input immediately with what is displayed. Controls are even more precise and responsive. That I don't know. I don't know, because the engine itself in games adds or subtracts latency. We know that, depending on the renderer type, depending on where the frame is and where the inputs are and when that's finally drawn in, all that kind of stuff. This is stuff that we all sort of know. So I'm not saying it's FUD, but what it most likely is, or seems to me, is to be sort of like a software suite, or not a suite, but like a driver set where they can say, hey, if you guys want more efficiency, here's one way in which the hardware is sort of set up to be as efficient as possible when it comes to latency. However, it just dawned on me as I'm talking, NVIDIA does have the low latency and ultra low latency mode, though effectively the ultra low latency mode can fuck some things up in some games. So there are some ways for it to go about that, but we'll just have to see. To me, that's awesome that they have it, but I think I wouldn't really expect it to dramatically change your gameplay experience right away. The next thing they talk about is HDMI 2.1 innovation. They talk about partnering with the HDMI forum, but one of the things they say is features such as auto low latency mode and variable refresh rate. What do those mean? Auto low latency mode, and it distinctly says here, is it will tell the TV automatically set the connected to display to its lowest latency mode. That's awesome. If anybody has an HDR TV out there, they know what I'm talking about. You have HDR, you have game mode, you have all these different modes, and a lot of times you'll plug a system in and, well, all the times it won't know anything about what you're plugging in, and you have to do adjustments because you could be playing in a super laggy game that's got, 120 milliseconds of lag introduced unless you go in and set it yourself. This will do auto setting of low latency mode. Very cool. And I believe the Xbox has a manual setting for that. I could be wrong, but I know low latency mode's in there on the Xbox X. As is variable refresh rate, which they talk about here. Variable refresh rate is pretty simple. What this does is if the frame is ready to be drawn, it doesn't have to wait for the TV screen. It doesn't have to wait for the system to go for its a specific allotted time to draw that frame. It can draw it instantly. What this can do is make variable frame rates that you've heard me complain about in reviews look a little smoother. Well, not a little smoother, a lot smoother. You've got your GeForce cards have their own version, and then of course you have a FreeSync on the AMD cards. FreeSync and the 2.1 HDMI spec for this are about the same thing. So what this does is it basically, like I said, will allow for the frame when it's ready to be drawn on the actual screen instead of an auto timing where they sort of sync up. What's interesting here, though, sorry about my chair. What's interesting here, though, is not a lot of people are going to have these. Not a lot of people are going to have HDMI 2.1 TV. So these are improvements, again, that I think you'll be seeing for if you buy a new TV in the next 2 years, that kind of stuff. Because a lot of people have an Xbox X, and those are already supported there. The next bullet point, 120 FPS support. With support up to 120 frames per second, Xbox Series X allows developers to exceed standard 60 FPS output. So, yes, that is cool only if the games support it, though. So that is just saying support. I want to make sure that that's clear, because I've actually seen people going like, oh, so I'll just set this on 120, like we're good to go. No, it's not what it is at all. So if games support it, they're just saying through the HDMI spec and everything, they're allowed to, they're able to push it out. But don't expect every game to be doing that. In fact, We see this a lot of times where people are like, with the new consoles, they should demand, Microsoft and Sony should demand that all games are 60 FPS. The hardware manufacturers don't have that demand. They basically tell the companies what the power is, and they give them the testing boxes, and the companies themselves do that frame rate, and they decide where the frame rate is. The next thing or last thing I want to talk about are some elements that they talk about are more of services with the system. 4 generations of gaming, they say our commitment to compatibility means existing Xbox One games, including backwards compatible Xbox 360 and original Xbox games, look and play better than ever before. And it goes on, but then it says at the very end, all with no developer work required. And I have a question mark for this. To me, that indicates most likely that they're doing something like they did with the Xbox One and the Xbox 360, where it's a system within a system. The actual old system does not know that it's basically stupid. It does not know that it's an emulator built within other hardware. The reason why I bring this up, no developer work required, is pretty unusual to say. And the only other time I remember saying that, I'm pretty sure I saw, was in the backwards compatibility the previous time with Xbox. And they still needed developer support. But if the system is within a system, they could basically use upscalers and use various different ways in which they could get that at a higher resolution, those kind of things, steadier frame rates. But with no developer support or work required, what that means to me is that it's some kind of stupid emulator, which is fine, by the way, but it's a stupid emulator where it's in there and it's not requiring the dev to come in and adjust things. They're able to do that within the console itself. Very interesting, and I could be wrong on that, but that's the only time you really ever hear them say with no developer work required. The last one is smart delivery. This technology, or second to last, this technology empowers you to buy a game once, and you know that whether you're playing it on the Xbox One or Xbox Series X, you're getting the right version. I think everybody sort of understands what this means. It sounds a little bit like they're allowing for developers to also choose package sizes. So what that would mean is if you have your Xbox normal and you decide you want to buy the newest game, it might only download the textures for that particular one. It also means that when you buy a game, and this is something that they've said, when you buy a disc, it will have all 3 versions on it. What that usually means is it will be a smart technology that will have some kind of hardware identifier that will identify if it's on the original or the X. Most likely not as much of a difference there. And then the Series X, and it will install what matters for those systems. So not really anything incredibly unusual there, but it was nice to see Cyberpunk say this morning, if you buy it for the Xbox X, you'll get the upgrade for free, or the Xbox X series for free. And I think everybody sort of figured that. And then Xbox Game Pass. Yeah, we know about that, right? We know about the Game Pass. Game Pass is a great innovation. I think it offers such a deal. That's what's really cool now as we're going into this gen, and everybody's offering something different. You got exclusives, you got portability, and you have value. It's going to be a great time. Competition is going to be very cool. Seeing these consoles become more powerful, getting away from the Jaguar mobile CPUs is really exciting to me. But I'd like to know what you guys think about this. Finally getting some actual concrete data is pretty crazy, and to have them just pop out the 12 teraflops, I think for a lot of people is not expected. I'm sure at this point, Digital Foundry or a couple other people have put out videos, Digital Foundry in particular. I'll go watch theirs. I'm absolutely sure they've probably by now posted it. Hopefully, you know what I'll do? I'll reach out and I'll see if John can come back on the podcast like he did last time, and we'll discuss this as well. So, we'll be discussing it on the podcast regardless this Friday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitch. As for me, that's it. I would love to know what you guys think. Put it in the comments. Remember, guys, this is video games, man. It's not something to get all attacky about. If somebody likes a system you don't like, we get it. You got a PC like I do, this might not be as interesting. We get it. But if you have some questions about the technology, if you have some questions about the future, feel free to put them in there. And hopefully we get some knowledgeable, nice people in there who can answer each other and, not make us look like fucking idiots, which happens a lot of times. So anyway, that's it for me. If you get a chance, come on over to the Patreon if I've saved you any cash in the past. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.